Welcome to the Home Team, the show where no matter who you root for, here you're a part of the Home Team. I'm your host, Wyatt Bagnall, and in this episode, I'll be breaking down the Steelers and Browns on Thursday Night Football. Interesting game. I think a lot of people would probably be looking past this game a little bit too much. While the Browns have not quite had the year they want, they're still feisty. They always are, and in the AFC North, these teams always play tough. Before we jump in, hit like, hit subscribe, share the video. I'd really appreciate it. And without any further ado, let's break this bad boy down. So, if you don't know how I do this, I go position by position, and I'll tell you how I think these teams stack up with each other and who I think, in my opinion, is the objectively better team, like which roster has more to it. And then after that, I'll tell you how I think that how the game will actually go, because sometimes the better team is not always in position to win. Sometimes, be it momentum or one team just having another team's number, sometimes it's just a battle. So, jumping in, quarterback. For the Steelers, we have Russell Wilson, and for the Browns, we have Jameis Winston. This is a bit more complicated than you would think it is, but I'll put it this way. Russell Wilson has been more consistent than Jameis Winston. Last week, sort of notwithstanding, they had some red zone struggles against Baltimore, but Baltimore's a pretty decent team. I think Russell Wilson's actually played quite well for the Steelers for the most part, and I think that Jameis Winston for the Browns has been Jameis Winston. The highs are there, the lows are also there. There's every chance for the Steelers to make this an ugly game for the Browns just by catching the opportunities that Jameis will give to them. However, I do think that if they don't do that, Jameis also has the potential to just throw the ball all over the yard. We've seen this before. He's thrown for 5,000 yards, 30 touchdowns in a season. However, the 30 interceptions in that season is what killed them. Overall, I'm going to give the point to Russell Wilson because he's just more consistent overall. I think there's a lot to be said for the potential of Jameis Winston on a good day. I just don't think that good day is consistent enough for me to sit here and tell you that I think it's going to happen. Running back, also a bit complicated. We got Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren for the Steelers, and then Nick Chubb a couple weeks back from his injury for the Browns. This is tough because, like, on a personal level, I think Nick Chubb's a really, really good running back, and I'm a big fan of his, and I think that given time and the situation in Cleveland improving a bit, I think Nick Chubb could still be the running back he was. However, it hasn't quite yielded itself in results yet. And that's fair. The Browns have to work him back. So, with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren both individually being good players, neither one of them the caliber of Nick Chubb, but together they're able to match that level of production, and the Steelers just being better all around, so the running game thriving more. I'm going to have to give the edge to the Steelers, even though I'm really tempted to give them both a point. I think the Steelers group is slightly better. I am going to give them both a point, though, because I think at any time Nick Chubb could have one of those games. So I'm going to give the point to both teams. Wide receivers. This is pretty straightforward. The Steelers, George Pickens is the main weapon. For the Browns, Amari Cooper was till he was traded to the Bills. Now Jerry Jeudy's the number one in Cleveland, and that alone would make me pick the Steelers. But then you also have Mike Williams there, who is getting more and more touches. Calvin Austin's a young player that's getting touches. Van Jefferson's in Pittsburgh. They have more depth as well over the Browns, and I'm going to give the Steelers the point there by a pretty safe margin. Tight ends. This is a underrated group for these teams. The Steelers, Pat Freiermuth is the one that most people know. Darnell Washington is the other tight end there that plays a lot. Good player. He's more of a blocker, but he's huge and has a lot of range to him. So when they do throw him the ball, he's a hell of a target. And once he gets moving, he's really tough to bring down. For the Browns, obviously, David Njoku is the tight end there. Last year was the year he really broke out. This year, a lot of things haven't gone so great in Cleveland. He's also missed some time due to injury this year. And I think that overall, he's still a really good player. It just isn't yielding the results that he would have wanted. So I'm going to give them both points because I think that they're both actually pretty strong at this position. And if on any given Sunday, the Steelers and Browns decide that it's how they want to win by like prioritizing that position group, they could do it. Offensive line. This is neither team's strength for different reasons. The Steelers, they're just never awesome on the tackles, it seems like. Interior-wise, the Steelers are pretty solid. The Browns, it's a struggle for a different reason. They just haven't been able to have the same group out there. There's no continuity with that line, and it's showing. You couple that with the quarterback play, and you have essentially a disaster year for that Browns offensive line unit. I'm not exactly sure that I can award a point to either of these two for that, but I think they're of similar quality. I'll give them both a point because I think they're of similar quality. So we'll do that. So offensively, I think the Steelers have the edge. On to the defensive side of the ball. Defensive line. The Cleveland Browns have Myles Garrett, who is an awesome player, a phenomenal player, absolute game wrecker, viable for Defensive Player of the Year every single year. The Steelers also have one of those guys in TJ Watt, and I would say this year he has been the better of the two, which is not by a lot, but he's just made more of the big plays in the big moments, and obviously being on the Steelers and not the Browns, they win more. And it shows, and it makes everybody think even more positively of him than Myles Garrett. I would say that, I'm going to do what I can here to try to make this sound close, but I'll just get this out of the way. The Steelers have the point here. I want to give the Browns the point too because of Myles Garrett, and given that he's going to be on one of these tackles that is not phenomenal, I'm going to give both groups a point because it's not a weakness, but I do want to be clear that I think that the Steelers group is pretty superior. Just because not only do they have TJ Watt, Cam Hayward's playing at an all-pro level. I think Highsmith is still out with an ankle injury, but Nick Herbig's been playing great. They have Preston Smith in there. They have a really strong edge group, and Cam Hayward on the interior. They're strong all around. It's one of the few defensive lines in the entire NFL that takes over every game they play, and it shows consistently. So I'm going to give them both a point, but I do think that just out of respect to Myles Garrett, essentially, but I do believe that the Steelers group is the stronger, and I don't think it's that close overall. Unless Myles Garrett, who has the potential to be a game wrecker, if he wrecks it, it's going to look great, but if not, I would expect the Steelers group to be more consistent and more consistently disruptive as well. Linebackers. I'm going to give them both a point here right away. So Patrick Queen is the headliner for the Steelers in that linebacking group, and then for the Browns, it's Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. They are both very, very good. I actually think that JOK is better for the Browns than Patrick Queen is for the Steelers, but Patrick Queen is by no means a weakness. JOK, I think, is just a little bit more... He's just a bit more reliable in coverage in particular, but Patrick Queen, given the complement of pieces around him in the Steelers' defense, is playing very well. And basically ever since Roquan Smith went to Baltimore and he got a much better example of how to, play that position from another elite player at it, Patrick Queen has taken off and lived up to the first-round billing that he was selected by. And both teams are just strong at linebacker, so they both get a point here. It should also be noted last week Peyton Wilson for the Steelers had one of the most crazy... It goes down as an interception on Lamar Jackson. I think that really should be more of a fumble, but it's technically an interception where he just rips the ball away. And from the receiver, once it's in his hands and he's going to the ground, it's one of the most impressive plays I've seen from a linebacker this year. So I think that there's a chance that they have another good one on their hands. We just need to get him a new number. 41 is not a good linebacker number. And then into the secondary. So this is one where they both have name value guys in their secondaries. The Browns, Denzel Ward is the name guy. The Steelers, Minkah Fitzpatrick would be the name guy. And both are good players. Overall, I'm going to take the Steelers group. When you take Joey Porter, who's a really good man corner, Dante Jackson, who's played well for the Steelers after having some struggles in Carolina, big surprise, people struggle in Carolina. Given the struggles of the Browns defense on the whole, it's tough to have too great a feeling about the Browns secondary. However, I will say this. They're a man-cover team a lot of the time. And when that defensive front can't get home, you're going to lose eventually on the back end. You can't hold up for 7 to 10 seconds. Not everybody. Maybe one of your guys is going to be able to do that, but somebody will come free. I think that the problem that the Browns face a lot of the time is that they're trying to play so aggressively also to overcome that offense. They're trying to force the big play. They want to force the turnover, that they jump routes. They're trying to punch and strip at the ball. So they miss some tackles when they're trying to do that. And then when they jump the routes, people hit them for a double move, and you can just launch one over the top. And in a game with George Pickens and Russell Wilson, he wants to throw that deep ball. They have to be so disciplined in their technique and their coverage that those double moves can't get in there and get them. They need to play more within themselves and trust that this offense is going to be able to generate enough. I think this game is likely to be lower scoring on the whole. I think the Steelers' offense is definitely better, but I think that if the Browns are going to have a chance, it has to be with being more opportunistic rather than trying to force the issue here. The turnovers, those moments will come. Russell Wilson, because he likes to take these shots, we saw it in the end zone last week against Baltimore. He just floated one up, and Marlon Humphrey comes down with an easy pick. Russell Wilson, there will be moments where he'll give you the chances. It'll be less than Jameis Winston, but when those moments come, just be ready to jump on it then. Until then, guys in the Steelers receiving core, George Pickens in particular, are too dangerous to be making the jump on. Maybe somebody like Mike Williams you can jump a route on because he's not particularly fast by NFL standards. But the Steelers have been trying to force the ball in George Pickens' directions quite a bit. They want him to have the ball in his hands. You cannot get over-aggressive in that situation if you're the Browns and you want to win. So I think that that's something to watch, because I believe if they can stay disciplined in their coverage, then maybe you have a chance. But the Steelers are also very much going to be looking to use their aggression against them. Whereas the Steelers, they just don't seem to ever panic or blink. Joey Porter, really good in man coverage, had a good game against Zay Flowers last week. And I think overall, him, Dante Jackson, Minka Fitzpatrick roaming in the back end, Patrick Queen, and the other linebackers taking away the middle of the field. I think that they have a much better opportunity to play within themselves because they very rarely also have to cover for more than 3 or 4 seconds with that Steelers defensive front. So the Steelers are just set up defensively to have a lot of success, and I think it shows. And it's why they're great. They're one of the few teams on defense that are good every single year. We see this with a lot of teams where they fall off. They can't sustain. They can have a good 2-3 year pop, but the Steelers know exactly how they want to play defense, and they know how to develop the guys they bring in. They put the proper assets in the proper place, and the Steelers' defense is always dangerous because of it. So I think that's absolutely huge. So overall, I'm going to give the edge to the Steelers secondary for a couple reasons. They're more disciplined, they play less desperate, and their front is going to help them. So I would say overall, the Steelers' defense is also better than the Browns' defense by the slimmest of margins. Really, I'd say that it's defensive line depth allowing the Steelers' secondary to play more within themselves that gives the Steelers defense the edge. Because obviously we all know the Browns were elite last year. But I think that the drop-off in defensive line depth in Cleveland has really hurt them, mixed with the desperation of trying to force short fields for this offense. It's hurt the Browns' defense on the whole. And then I would say that special teams we don't really do on here because special teams isn't normally the thing that makes or breaks these games, but I want to mention it in this game because Chris Boswell has played at such a high level. He's played so well. He made 6 field goals in multiple games this year. It's rare. He's on pace to break the all-time mark for field goals, and I think it's really, really worth noting that. I'm not going to sit here and give points and stuff when I don't usually do it, but I just wanted to mention that Chris Boswell is an absolute weapon for the Steelers. And then finally, coaching. I'm a big Mike Tomlin fan. Overall, I would say he is the better coach in any game he plays. But I do also want to mention Kevin Stefanski is a 2-time coach of the year. And as a result, I'm not going to sit here and say that he is outclassed by Mike Tomlin. I think that Mike Tomlin is about as good as it gets. And I think Kevin Stefanski is about as underrated as it gets. So I'm actually going to give them both a point for coaching because I think that both teams have punched above their weight very, very consistently. And I know everybody's going to say, oh, Kevin Stefanski, the Browns, this, that, and the other. Mike Tomlin's never had a losing year. Yes, true. It's all true, and I love Mike Tomlin. But we also need to keep in mind that the situation in Cleveland is way different. And what he's been able to get in terms of elevating players, he's been able to elevate essentially every player except Deshaun Watson in Cleveland. And I think that deserves a lot of credit. Not to mention, out of all these AFC North teams, the Browns have actually had like a decent amount of success against the Steelers. Usually the Steelers have found themselves on the better end of these series, and they still do with the Browns for the most part, but the Browns have always played them tough, and they play ugly games, and they get the chance to win. So overall, the Steelers had the edge slightly, but in terms of just their overall roster construction, their team, their coaching, everything, I think they're slightly better at everything. But I don't think it's so far that they're going to blow the Browns out. Now, who do I want to win this game? I want the Steelers to win. Do I think the Steelers are going to win? Yes. I think they're just more disciplined. They're less panicked. They're able to stay more within their zone and within their lane. And as a result, in an ugly game, they're going to feel more comfortable winning it. And I think that the potential is there that they can get a drive that's really short if the Browns DBs jump a route and they can just get one of those signature moon balls to George Pickens. I think that is very much in play for the Steelers. And a big play like that could be the difference in a close game. So I am going to take the Steelers tonight, but I expect it to be a good game, a hard-hitting AFC North game like we're all used to. So thanks so much for tuning in. Enjoy Thursday Night Football. Like, share the video. And please subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Peace.